Give me big old buckets of butterbeer. Give me big old barrels of butterbeer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here of the sweet old butterbeer.
Welcome to the Three Broomsticks. We invite you to pull up a chair, grab a butterbeer, and settle in for a hearty discussion about Harry Potter. I'm Sophia Jenkins.
And I'm Karoline Oberländer, and I have the great pleasure to introduce two guests. Both have been here for a couple of times now. First, Grace, who will join us for an hour. She's been here the fifth time now, so basically your host now. Welcome on board.
You just can't get rid of me at this point. I keep crawling up from the basement, grabbing a microphone. You're going to have to beat me away.
Yeah, it's hard to get rid of you. No, I'm so grateful you're here and jumping in. And I don't think we need your Hogwarts house and favorite book and favorite character. We've heard that enough. But
I keep beating you over the head with those facts. I can't stop.
We do have an episode-specific question, and I'm going to ask that to a second guest, who I'm going to introduce in a minute as well. But maybe to you now, Grace, what would you ask and of whom if they took a drop of Veritaserum?
Whew, that's a good question.
Morals and ethics aside.
Oh, geez. Oh.
If you do want to think about it, maybe first you want to promote something?
I do, actually. Let me think about this. Let me put a pin in it. I don't mean to be boring about it, but my brain just exploded. No. And I don't know if any of these suggestions are appropriate for a public podcast. So... I have a book coming out. The Voldemort book is going to be premiering on April 21st. It hits the shelves, so you can find it at your local bookshop. And if you cannot find it there, then you can ask for it because they can order it in. And also, probably Barnes & Noble. You could find it there too. So if you want to read more about my favorite boy, Tommy Riddle, go on and head over there. I'm very excited about it. I'm doing a few book signings coming up. So if you're in the Philadelphia area, go ahead and check my Instagram and you might be able to come over for a book signing.
Very exciting. And you're going to be in New York, aren't you?
We're in New York City. I'm coming to New York City. Yeah,
I might see you then.
Ah, that's going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
Well, you need to do a Europe tour, please, as well.
Honestly, I would love to do that.
I know.
It's any excuse to go traveling would be wonderful.
If you ever do so, let me know, and then I'll come to your book signing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And I know you only have an hour, so that's why I wanted to give you the time to promote your book right now. I'm looking forward to reading that.
Thank you. And I'm honored to be back, so thank you for having me back.
It's your fifth time, so yeah.
Even though you didn't have a choice because I did crawl back over and I did steal the microphone and I'm currently hiding away in the closet with it, so.
And now to our actual official guest, Charles Boyd, who is here for his second time. The first time was on episode 39, Law and Order. So quite fitting, actually, for that topic, because we might talk a little bit about law later. So, Charles, as it's your second time and it's been a while, maybe you can give us a short refresher on your Hogwarts house, your favorite book, favorite character, and then also answer the question, what would you ask and of whom if they took a drop of Veritaserum?
Okay, so, my Hogwarts house, both myself and my Great Pyrenees Wendell, our Hogwarts house is Hufflepuff. Favorite book is Goblet of Fire, but I'll actually give an honorable mention to number 2, Chamber of Secrets, because it's a lot of fans' least favorite.
Hell yeah, baby! That's my favorite.
I'm also a Chamber of Secrets fan, so I will.
Oh my
second
god!
You on that.
You guys have such good taste. Incredible taste.
In my opinion, it's my favorite other than Goblet. And in terms of favorite characters, it's sort of a toss-up between Dumbledore, Hagrid, and the twins, but Hermione is the character that I'm probably the most similar to personality-wise. And it's so in terms of Veritaserum, I so it was interesting. As soon as you said that, I started thinking, okay, this is a good one. And, I could cheat and say, and just pick the fan question about the story and characters that I would most want to ask J.K. Rowling, but I'm going to give a bit of a more sort of unusual answer and say, and it's sort of an answer without a full answer, but I'm a historian and history doctoral student, and periodically I come across something, with historical figures that I'm studying where I'm like, dang it, if I could just ask them what they were thinking at this point, or what they meant by this, or what their view of something was, man, what I wouldn't give. And so I would probably have to think for a little bit about, okay, what is the question I most want to ask a historical figure that I've studied and written about, and then give them Veritaserum and ask them. So I haven't decided what the question would be, but it would be, or who it would be to, but it would be something along those lines.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah.
I can agree with that. I feel like I'd feel similarly.
God. That's a good choice, though.
Oh, thank you.
Do you have a specific, time, area of time where you're specifically interested in the truth?
Yeah, so it would definitely be somebody from mid-19th century U.S., probably one of the abolitionists that I've studied. I really specialize in American slavery and abolitionism, which that could actually give you an idea of why I say that Hermione is one of the reasons why Hermione is one of the characters that I'm the most similar to personality-wise. It's not the only reason, but I might even I might have to pick, if I'm picking a specific person from that era, Wendell Phillips, the abolitionist I named my dog after. I'd probably come up with something to ask him.
Very
That's a good
interesting.
answer.
Thank you.
Grace, have you thought of yours?
Oh my God, that just gave me more ideas. Oh God.
Just pick one that's podcast appropriate.
Oh geez. No, I'm sorry, I can't. There's too many. My brain is plagued. Yeah, how about right before I leave? I'll give you right before I head out. I'll give you that.
Sounds fair.
We'll let you get away with that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, in case people have not already guessed, today for episode number 85, we have gathered to discuss the topic Veritaserum. Not to be confused with the chapter Veritaserum. But first, I want to do a huge Patreon shout out. Huge thanks to Katie Rican over on our Patreon, who bought us this round of drinks at the pub. Yay!
Yay!
If you would like to buy us around at the pub, head over to patreon.com/3broomsticks. That's with the numeral 3 to sign up. And you can listen to bonus content. I think recently we did our reactions to the new Harry Potter trailer. So if that's something that you've been thinking about, want to discuss, please head over. And we would really appreciate your help in keeping the lights on at the 3 Broomsticks so that we can talk about Harry Potter for a long time to come.
And now let us offer a toast to the comments on episode 82. The episode was about the chapter Potions Master in Philosopher's Stone, I think chapter 8. And we raise our glass to commenter That Fantasy Analyst, who, if I'm not mistaken, was a guest from that episode, Luke, who jumped right back into a lengthy and relentless discussion with Irvin and absent-minded Raven on whether or not Snape deserves forgiveness. And he writes, I'm willing to show forgiveness to Snape for his mistakes. To be completely clear, I'm not evaluating Snape based on how tragic his backstory has been. Having a crappy life doesn't justify doing whatever you want. The issue in question here is of mercy, not morality. The morality of this situation is entirely objective and could not be clearer. The debate rests upon whether we can reasonably forgive him given the situation. I find that the answer is yes. And later he says, that is precisely my argument, that we should forgive him because he is mentally incapable of restraining his worst behaviors. And yes, Dumbledore is largely to blame for placing him in a situation where he interacts with a lot of children. It was quite a discussion in our comment section. How do you all feel about forgiving Snape and the difference between mercy and morality?
I that was my favorite line in here. The issue in question here is of mercy, not morality. That's kind of beautiful.
What a way of phrasing it.
I think that there are kind of a few different areas in which we could either forgive or not forgive Snape. I actually think that the areas in which he has acted the worst, which is joining the Death Eaters, I feel the most forgiveness for him. Because I think that he has fully seen the error of his ways there and worked very hard to right some of the wrongs that he committed, to fight back against this regime that he had previously been fully supporting. I think the area that I feel less forgiveness on is the sort of how he is just generally as a human being. Like the general bullying and unkindness or cruelty to the students, where I think, yes, he never should have had a teaching job, and that is, Dumbledore is, well, not just Dumbledore, it was his choice too. Dumbledore is to blame, but also Snape chose to do this, and he chose to do it for, the reasons of trying to help Dumbledore and helping the good side, but he also chose to make a lot of terrible decisions within that role. And I don't see any evidence that he feels even the slightest bit of remorse for that. So I would say, yeah, actually, that's the area that I struggle more with forgiveness than with his, bigger wrongs that he's committed.
That's interesting, because that means if you would take away his biggest mistakes, basically, joining the Death Eaters and so on, wouldn't you then just have a crappy teacher? And
a crappy human being.
And a crappy human being.
Yeah.
But I feel like then we wouldn't even have this discussion about forgiveness, because we would just say, okay, that's just a crappy human being, crappy teacher, but there's no question about whether we need to forgive him.
Right. I think that's true. And when I say crappy human being, he has, I think, some redeeming qualities, but he is not he's not a pleasant person to spend time with. He is not pleasant to the people around him. He's a crappy teacher. He's a bully. Yeah. And so if we took away all of the Death Eater stuff, then we would just be yeah, he's kind of a and there's no reason to be talking about whether we forgive him or not, because there's no reason to think that he should be forgiven for that part, It's
wild, because it's whenever we delve into this character, especially when it comes to the situation of him being a teacher, it's his he never lets this discomfort in his life, the fact that he's in contact with all these kids all the time, or the fact that he's forced to teach, quote unquote, he's forced to teach them. He never lets that be the impetus for change. I think that's what annoys people the most, is that he just chooses to stay the same. His morality is shifted. He's no longer in Death Eater territory, but he just hasn't gone far enough to be a more supportive individual. So I think that's what so many people find so frustrating, including myself, when we're watching something like this and he's just abusing children the whole time.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that as I have grown older, and I feel slightly embarrassed to admit this on a public podcast, but I did have one job where I was teaching teenagers, and they were very difficult. And I started sympathizing with Snape, where I just genuinely hated some of these kids so much.
I'm sure it's so difficult.
And for the first time, I was kind of yeah, this is not bringing out the best in me. I don't think in general that speaks to my character, but I think in this circumstance, I was just like, teenagers can be very challenging. And if they don't like you, then it's hard for you to be, to bring your most generous self to the table.
It's hard to be the adult in the room, right? It's like
Yes,
he acts like a child
hard.
constantly.
Yes.
So you kind of just have to deal with it. And it's just wild.
And like he started teaching at the same age that I was when I had this job.
Mm-hmm.
And we were technically the adults in the room, but we were like 21.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not feel like I was a full adult yet. I felt like, I did not feel that different in age from these students. And I just
trying to wrangle the masses, basically.
if I had spent like, I don't know, 11, 12 years in that specific job before meeting Harry Potter, I think maybe I would not be a very nice teacher by that point. I'll be honest.
It's wild though. If he had been in that position, I feel like maybe it didn't occur to him. Maybe it didn't occur to anyone else around him. Couldn't he have asked for like maybe something behind the scenes administrative, like nothing having to do with like dealing with kids in that case? If he has to
that
stay,
would have been the most obvious solution.
But they have no administration. They have no administration.
Maybe he becomes the first administrator. I don't know. I'm solving these problems retrospectively, but yeah.
Keep in mind, Dumbledore was able to relatively easily keep Trelawney at Hogwarts, even after she was removed from her teaching job in Order of the Phoenix. So it does seem like...
Yeah, but that was sort of a different situation. Like, that was a different situation where, like, there wasn't very much time that she spent being at Hogwarts but not teaching. And then she went back to being a teacher, at least part-time. So, yeah, like... It would have been weird if for 11 years Snape was just living at Hogwarts and not teaching. That would have been really weird. And everyone would be like,
or at
what's
least if he
deal?
had a job.
Yeah, I don't think there are, like, they don't seem to have administration. I don't know.
They desperately need it. Someone would need to restock all of the potions ingredients.
The house
Maybe
elves
that's
do that.
him. I don't know.
I think it's the house elves. Yeah, I don't know. I think that, like, I can see how certain types of teaching positions can really burn you out and change you over time.
Oh, yeah.
However, also I think that, like, for the most part, like, the students at Hogwarts don't like, I don't know. They don't hate Snape until he hates them first.
Exactly.
Kind of. So it's kind of like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, in my teaching position, all of these kids just hated me just because I was trying to get them to follow rules or ask them to do anything.
Oh,
and
the
these
horrors.
kids don't seem to hate... Yeah, I know. Like, these kids only seem to hate the teachers who hate them first.
Exactly.
Or are really bad at their jobs. Like, so I don't have sympathy in that case. But I do have sympathy in the situation of, like, I think I am actually good at teaching with the right group of people, and this was not it, and with the right like, support and scenario, and this was not it. But Snape is just not good at teaching, and he hates kids. So, yeah, I don't know.
Ooh, maybe that should be my ask. Let's ask Snape what his real passion was for. It definitely isn't teaching. Something else. I don't know what it is. And then he'd have to tell the truth. That
would definitely be an interesting one. One thing I'll also point out is that he does allow Draco to screw around in class, even though, which honestly, because I've seen the defense of, and there's a lot of problems with this argument, but I've seen the argument of, well, he's mostly mean because he's worried about classroom safety. And it's like, it's specifically stated it's specifically stated in Chamber of Secrets that he lets Draco.
I don't buy that at all.
And this kind of ties into, do you guys mind if I give my take on that question? I won't do like a filibuster or anything.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, and talking about kind of my priors in this, I've worked in mostly higher ed. So, I've only subbed at the K through 12 level, but most of my, I like most of the bullies that I've actually dealt with in my 34 years have been teachers, not other kids. Like, so like when I was a kid, like my worst bullies were all teachers. So I have like I have sort of my own perspective on this, but I think we have, because my position is sort of in line with Irvin's and sort of in line with the commenter whose name I'm afraid to say I don't remember. It's sort of between the two of them, because I think we're dealing with two separate issues here. So I actually think everything is forgivable and almost everything is understandable. But so I think that anybody, I don't think anybody is beyond forgiveness, and I sympathize with Snape's abusive, his abusive upbringing, which I think, played a big role in shaping his personality really before he got to Hogwarts in a lot of ways. But that's a separate question from whether he is capable of controlling his actions. I don't see much evidence in the text for any kind of like mental illness or other kind of compulsions that prevent Snape from, at the very least, being gruff but not verbally and emotionally abusive toward the kids. I think I will also say, like, so Dumbledore is one of my favorite characters. He absolutely is partly on the hook for Snape's behavior because he not only put him in that role, but also didn't exercise proper oversight. The flip side of that is, not only did Snape agree to take that job, but, Dumbledore is giving him way too much leeway, but it's pretty well established in the Prince's Tale flashbacks that, like, if Snape asks Dumbledore, would you rather I be an abusive asshole or would you rather I try to be civil to everybody, Dumbledore's preference would be that he be civil. So there's no evidence Dumbledore's telling him to act that way, in my opinion, to maintain his cover.
Yeah, no.
And I will also say one point that I never thought about this, but Irvin makes this point in his Dumbledore book, is that Snape is generally less openly horrible to his students when there's other adult witnesses. And that would specifically undercut the argument that he can't control what he's doing, because if he can act like a generic strict teacher when there's other adults in the room, then he can act like a generic strict teacher
when there aren't.
That's kind of my thing. I also think one of his fundamental problems is that he feels immense guilt about Lily's death, but he doesn't seem to understand that Harry is the biggest victim in that besides Lily herself.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that doesn't translate into, I've made this kid's life vastly harder by helping cause his mom to get killed.
Yeah.
The guilt would be too much if he were to do that. It would be all consuming.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's why he has to hate Harry. He has to hate Harry because if he didn't hate Harry, he'd have to admit to himself that he is the reason this kid is an orphan and had this terrible childhood. And so I think it's a defense mechanism against this overwhelming guilt that he would feel otherwise.
I'm so happy that you brought this up, though, with the idea of, like, people deserve forgiveness, but that doesn't mean that we should completely ignore that it should be like complete no oversight at all. I always make I make this argument. I make this argument in the Voldemort book that, like, people are always deserving of empathy, but they're also deserving of what's the word for it? Accountability.
Yes, exactly.
If those need to go hand in hand, like, you can be empathetic for someone's situation because clearly Snape was not in a good way when he grew up and he was horribly bullied and he fell in with a very wrong crowd, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't hold him accountable for it. And he's definitely holding himself accountable for it, but he doesn't have he stopped emotionally developing, I think, when that mental break happened with Lily's death. So that his emotions just haven't developed beyond that point, aside from learning that he had a wrong mindset. So he learned the hard way, but he did learn. He just did not push himself to further his emotional development, because he would have probably ended up something like about on par with someone like Dumbledore, where he's both very wise and also like very knowledgeable, and he's able to impart that to people and not be shaken by the people around him. But he can't. He's shaken by almost everything, by children, honestly.
Yeah.
I think once again we can conclude that people need therapy in the books.
Oh, yeah.
Not only the kids, but also
But
the
where's
teachers.
the fun in that? We just want to watch them go crazy.
Well, I think we will watch Snape and others go crazy again.
I think the truth of the matter is we want to watch them go nuts.
Let's jump into our main discussion, because we will come back to Snape here a couple of times. On Veritaserum. And I first just quickly wanted to talk about the name of Veritaserum, and then go over when it was used. I put together a list. I'm not sure if it's complete, but I tried to go through the books. So first of all, for anyone who doesn't know, Veritas is Latin and means truth. Can also be. It is also the name of the goddess of truth. Who and I love Roman and Greek gods because they're so confusing and complicated. Daughter of Saturn, who's the god of time. Sometimes also daughter of Jupiter. It depends who you ask. Who's god of sky and thunder, so like Zeus for the Greeks. And then she is the mother of virtues, so the god of bravery and military strength. And Veritas, the goddess, is often depicted dressed in white, which white is the color of truth and innocence, or depicted not dressed, which is called nuda veritas, so the naked truth, which I found very funny when I read that.
Is that the judgment card from tarot? I'm looking it up right now.
I've no idea about tarot, so couldn't tell you.
Give me 1 second. Let me see her.
But judgment is
wait, no,
different...
okay, wait, no, it's not judgment.
I thought judgment was different, but I'm not sure.
Judgment is different. I was thinking of, oh God, where the girl is, oh my God, it's like an equilibrium card. Oh, what is it?
Oh.
That's okay, it'll come to me. Go on.
That's interesting, this sort of, the, like,
Justice.
Nuda Veritas or whatever. It makes me think of how the potion is clear, so it's like it doesn't have any colors or whatever. It's completely clear, and yeah, just makes me think of that.
Yeah, it's see-through, basically.
Yeah.
You can see through the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just quickly, I don't want to dwell on it too much, because we're going to get into it later on. When was it used? So
quickly, actually, I think this is going to be our 7 ingredients of today's special.
Sorry.
Sorry.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I believe, assuming this is right, these are the 7 times that we see it in the series. So go for it, Karolina.
Okay, so the first time is Goblet of Fire, where Snape threatens to use it because he suspects Harry has been stealing ingredients, which of course was fake Mad-Eye Moody and not Harry, this time at least, because Harry has been getting on Snape's nerves once in a while. Then the second time is Goblet of Fire, chapter 35 on Barty Crouch Jr., which we talked about last episode. And then number 3 is Order of the Phoenix, where Umbridge interrogates Harry while trying to use Veritaserum on him. I think it's unclear if Snape actually provided her with it, or if he gave her something else, because Harry doesn't drink it.
Dumbledore said that it was fake Veritaserum.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I had like an inkling, but I wasn't sure. Okay, so Snape didn't actually provide it with her.
Crazy.
Dumbledore I think at the end of Order of the Phoenix says to Harry, like, Snape has been providing Umbridge with fake Veritaserum.
Yes, I think, in the office scene at the end.
I'm pretty sure. I don't have the exact quote, but I can look it up while you're giving the rest, Karoline.
That's okay. You don't have to look it up. That's all right. I believe you.
And then number 4 is still Order of the Phoenix. Umbridge wants more Veritaserum and puts Snape on probation because he tells her that his stock is empty and he can't really make it out of thin air, and it takes some time. Then now I have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The Half-Blood Prince, Slughorn shows his potion class, the potion Veritaserum, and says that this is something they need to be able to do for the newts. And I just want to mention that I think that all the kids should be required to take a course on ethics, and not only there, they should take the ethics course a little earlier too.
It should be a yearly thing. It should be a yearly review at least.
Yeah, just a refresher. Ethics, morality.
Heard them all in for a presentation on ethics.
Yeah. And then number 6, still in Half-Blood Prince, Harry thinks about using it on Slughorn to get the memory. And the last one, number 7, in Deathly Hallows, Rita Skeeter uses it on Bathilda Bagshot, which I think is interesting because either means, and I don't know if I don't know if we know that or if we can just guess. That means that she either wasn't of sound of mind and it still worked. So, I mean, meaning that without Veritaserum, she couldn't tell the story, but with Veritaserum, she could, which is crazy. Or she was of sound of mind, and Skeeter used so much that it broke her, which is also crazy.
Ooh. I have actually a lot of thoughts on this, but I think they will be more relevant later on in our conversation, so I will save them for that. But I think this is a really interesting case.
Oh, that's so sinister if that's the case.
I don't think it's the second one because Rita Skeeter puts the note on the book that she gives to Bathilda that is even though you didn't know that you knew this stuff. Let me find that quote because I think that to me suggests that Bathilda was already struggling.
But I know what you mean, and I agree with you, and that gets us to the question: how does Veritaserum actually work?
Yeah. Okay. Let me see if I can quickly find this. Yeah. Okay. I can't remember. If I remember any of the keywords, I'll find it later.
Yes.
But yeah, how does Veritaserum work? So the first time we hear it described as working is that Snape says it's a truth potion so powerful that 3 drops would have you spilling your innermost secrets for this entire class to hear. And the way Harry takes this is that, literally any and all secrets he has, they will, instantly start spilling out of his mouth. So, he says, there are all these other things he was concealing, like the fact that he was in contact with Sirius, and his inside squirmed at the thought how he felt about Cho. So, for Harry, he is yeah. Harry thinks that, you put the potion in your mouth, and, literally anything that you have been, trying to conceal, it's comes straight out. But as soon as we see the one and only time we actually see Veritaserum in practice, that's clearly not how this works. So you have to ask someone very specific questions, and then they respond truthfully to those questions. But if you don't ask them about a certain area, then they won't tell you, and you won't know. So, you have to be asking them the right questions.
For that, I always have a problem with truth. Because what exactly is truth?
Yes.
And that's why I think that Bathilda Bagshot is so interesting. Because does that mean, when we now think that Bathilda wasn't sound of mind when Skeeter came to her. She took Veritaserum, and then she could talk about the things she remembered. Does that mean if I now think I talked to a guy called John, but he was actually called Marcus, and I take Veritaserum, will I remember the actual name? Even though I think the other name is the truth?
I think you would say John in that case, right? It doesn't invent truth for you. I think it, like, if I had certain, like, I don't know if I had like psychotic episodes where I believed something was happening and it wasn't actually happening, I feel like if I took truth serum, I would tell you about the episodes as if they actually happened.
That is my interpretation also.
Because that's what my mind believes.
I think it's completely what you believe to be true.
Yes.
Okay.
And there are a few moments where I kind of see that, where, like, okay, one thing that we definitely see is that it is not truth without emotion. He is talking about his feelings and how he feels about what's happening, Barty Crouch Jr. And also, there are certain things that he says that are things that he could not fully know. Like, he says about his father, he loved her, as in his mom, as he had never loved me. That, to me, is something that he can't possibly 100% know about his dad. Either it's his, like, belief about how his dad feels, or maybe his dad said that to him, but his dad might not have been telling the truth at that moment. So, like, to me, that's very clearly, like, that is what he believes.
Yeah.
And so that is what he's saying through Veritaserum. And the other quote, when he says, like, he is returned to power, as in Voldemort, and I will be honored by him beyond the dreams of wizards. That is his belief. There is no evidence that that is actually going to happen. Like, we don't know that that's actually going to happen. That's what he believes is going to happen next. So I think that it is what you believe is true. So I think that is one thing that makes Veritaserum not fully trustworthy, is that if you are wrong about something, or if you are deluded in some way, or if you have very strong beliefs, then it's not very accurate. And I think we see that with when Dumbledore says to Fudge that Barty Crouch confessed under the use of Veritaserum, and Fudge says, like, certainly Crouch may have believed himself to be acting upon you know whose orders, but to take the word of a lunatic like that, Dumbledore, and to be honest, that's kind of fair. Like, if that is how Veritaserum works, and that's, like, how we all know it works, then, like, he's right. Like, for all we know, Barty Crouch Jr. is totally, I mean, we know that he isn't, because we see the plan, how the plan was successful, but, like, because Fudge doesn't, like, he could be right, that he could be just totally delusional.
Well, and also the fact that he's alive, too, that should be a huge giveaway as to why it's a believable story, at least vaguely believable story, you know? Because he was supposed to have died in jail.
Well, it's a giveaway that part of the story is believable. As in, like, the fact, like, the part of the story about how he got out of Azkaban seems like it probably is believable, but that doesn't mean that all of the stuff about Voldemort giving him orders is believable.
One thing I will throw out with that is that when Snape, who Fudge knows has no incentive to lie to back up a story that Harry's telling, when Snape basically, you know, speaks to Fudge and says, you know, talks about the Dark Mark and, you know, giving it as evidence to sort of corroborate Harry's story, that's another, I would say, point of evidence that Fudge should have considered, because it's like, nothing, like, the Crouch story is not happening in a vacuum. There's a lot of sort of separate pieces of evidence that, taken together, you know, I think mean that Fudge should have.
I'm not defending Fudge, to be clear.
Oh, yes,
like,
I understand.
I'm not defending that he, like, everything he was doing was sensible, but, like, that specific point that he made of, like, well, just because you use Veritaserum doesn't mean that he actually was telling the truth. Like, I think that that probably is true. That
Yes, I agree.
this is one of the flaws of Veritaserum.
Isn't it also extra canonical that you can sort of fool Veritaserum? Like you can talk around it. I feel like for someone clever enough, you could definitely talk around the points. Like someone like Snape probably could talk around it really well because he's used to revealing a truth, but not quite revealing a truth, right?
And I think we're going to talk about that more later when we talk about what J.K. Rowling has said about its use in trials and stuff, because she did make some quotes on that. But I think that because it's not what Harry was thinking of, just all your secrets are spilling out, then theoretically you can answer stuff truthfully without giving all the information. And I wonder if somebody who was talented like Snape would be able to do that, where they're the things they are actually saying are truthful, but they're not giving all the details.
Yeah, he's been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
Right?
You can't lie. So tell me, puppet, where is Shrek?
I don't know where he's not.
You're telling me you don't know where Shrek is?
It wouldn't be inaccurate to assume that I couldn't exactly not say that is or isn't almost partially incorrect.
So you do know where he is?
On the contrary, I'm possibly more or less not definitely rejecting the idea that in no way, with any amount of uncertainty, that I undeniably do or do not know where he should and probably be. If that indeed wasn't where he isn't, even if he wasn't not where I knew he was, could mean that I wouldn't really not know where he was. Enough! Shrek went off to bring back the next heir! Oh!
That brings me to the question of sort of how does this potion actually affect the drinker? What is Barty Crouch Jr.'s experience of being under the influence of this potion? And we don't know what was going on in his head, but we have a few bits of information about physically how he's acting. So we have his face was slack, his gaze unfocused. He began to speak in a flat, expressionless voice. So to me, this gives off the sense that you're not fully in your right mind when you're underneath it, that you're sort of in a trance. It feels sort of trance-like, but it's not fully without emotion. As he's talking, there are certain things where he's showing emotion. So we see Crouch's head rolled on his neck, an insane grin spread across his face. The smile spread wider over Crouch's face as though recalling the sweetest memory of his life. The insane smile lit his features once more, and his head drooped onto his shoulder. So it seems for certain things, he is accessing the emotion side of it.
It almost seems like he's drunk.
Yeah.
These sort of these spells or these potions that sort of take away a few inhibitions.
Right.
Yeah.
It almost seems like they make you drunk. Amortentia does something very similar. The truth potion, it looks like from these passages, makes you do something slightly similar. And the controlling spell, Imperious, has that effect on your mind where you feel like these suggestions are the best suggestions,
Right. That's a great point, because actually what I was thinking about is how does this potion work? One of the things that we notice is that, and this is in the movie, they make it so that he's fighting back this whole time or whatever, but he's clearly not doing that. And he has zero emotions about the fact that he is saying these things. So we see that Winky is say no more, Master Barty, say no more. But Crouch took another deep breath and continued in the same flat voice. So Crouch is not realizing that he is saying things that he shouldn't say. He's not thinking it's not like he is compelled to say these things, but he is consciously oh shoot, I shouldn't be saying this. This is going to get me in trouble. He has no feelings about the fact that he's saying. And I wonder if it's like you're saying, does it just disable the part of your brain that is censoring yourself to say, telling yourself not to say these things? Is it disabling the part of your brain that's no, these are things you shouldn't say? And so you just end up responding truthfully because you don't remember why you shouldn't respond truthfully? Or does it actually force you to speak the truth?
I think it's probably some combo where it forces you to speak the truth, but also removes the part of your brain that's telling you not to. And I think that's why Crouch doesn't seem to be in distress. You know, it kind of reminded me a little bit of stories I've heard about laughing gas, where somebody gets hit with laughing gas before a medical procedure, and then their inhibitions are completely gone. So they're saying stuff that they would never say under normal circumstances. So I think it's some of column A and some of column B, because if it were just a compulsion, it seems like Crouch Jr. would be much more upset.
Yeah.
But it also does seem like, you know, it is also forcing him to tell whether he wants to or not.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the part that I'm less sure about. Like, does it force the word? Like, is there some mechanism that forces the words to come out of your mouth, or is it more just like you don't see any reason not to say it anymore, and you're in this sort of trance-like state where you're like, somebody asked me a question and things are coming out of my mouth, like, you know, like, could you fight I don't know.
I think you couldn't fight it, only because we have seen time and time before that the author takes reference from the real world, and we'll come to that a little later. But there is something like quote unquote actual truth serum, and you can imagine if you've ever seen someone taking LSD, just like being under the influence and talking. They won't stop talking, and you can ask them questions and they will answer.
Oh my God.
The question remains if that is actually the truth, what they're telling you, or just what they feel right now. But they will just not stop talking. They will talk and talk, and you can ask them questions and they will answer. So that's why I think, and because that has been around for a long time, or research on that, that this is maybe where that comes from, and then that would mean that it's more of you're on drugs and you just talk.
Well, this reminds me of hypnosis, like that.
I was thinking of that.
People have used hypnosis for like witness testimonies for stuff, and like it does help you access parts of your memory that you aren't able to access without it. But there is also a higher than normal amount of fabrication, of you just making stuff up. And some of this makes me wonder, like, I think this is something we see now in the world of like AI and ChatGPT, when like you ask a question to AI that it doesn't have an answer to, and so, but it feels the need to create an answer, and so it makes something up. And so I wonder, like, you know, with Dumbledore and Barty Crouch Jr., like, these are all things that Barty Crouch Jr. has a very specific answer in his head for it, and so it comes out accurately. But I do wonder if, like, there is a possibility of, if you ask
like fabrication,
weird questions, if there was fabrication.
I think so.
I'm not saying that
Oh, that is really interesting.
I'm not saying I 100% believe that's true within the magical world, because it's like, you would think maybe magic would, you know, make that not happen. But it is a really interesting question, because this is something that we do see with these sorts of other ways to get at someone's subconscious, or to get someone to tell you things they wouldn't otherwise, or whatever, that there is often this sort of fabrication element.
There's the only other thing that we see being like an ultimate source of truth is the pensieve, where it's like you can jump into one of your memories and see extra details you didn't actually see in the scene before. And that, I would say, is like, that's an incredible magical power in order to like get extra knowledge that you wouldn't have otherwise had. We don't really get the evidence that Veritaserum has that kind of power, though. But we also don't really see a ton of it in action.
I actually don't. I think that there is some evidence that Veritaserum can act similarly to a pensieve, which is the Bathilda Bagshot example, which is that maybe similarly to the pensieve, where there is like the true memory is somewhere in your brain that you can access and pull out, that maybe Veritaserum can help you access that memory.
Well, okay. But consider this, like Bathilda Bagshot, I got the impression from her when they said that she had gone a little crazy towards the end. I had the impression that they were talking, that was an implication of like dementia.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've ever spoken with someone who has dementia or has Alzheimer's.
I think I see where this is going, because I've been thinking probably what I think you're about to say.
Yeah, it's not as though like there are parts of them that can still access. There's still good days. There's still times when they like when I was speaking with my grandmother in her later years, there were times when she would remember like exactly who I was, who my sister was. She knew where we were from. Like all of this stuff would come back to her. And there were other days where I was a girl from her village in Italy, or I was someone completely different. It was just like, it's not as though the memories don't exist. It's just sometimes the mind is so complex and elastic, it becomes misplaced.
Yes. And this is also very common in sort of in memory, especially for people, with dementia, for example, or, you know, as they age, it is very common for someone to remember very clearly their childhood or things that are a long time away and not remember.
That was my grandma.
This conversation.
Even the transition in becoming a mother, like the way that my mind has changed, things I used to recall, no problem, like no issue, right on the tip of my tongue, I would have it no matter what. I forget those things all the time now. And like other things come to me much more easily. So I feel like different stages in life, your mind just becomes so different in all these separate ways.
I took a psychology of memory class in college, and it's interesting that like over time, I think they said that like it takes like 10 years for the memories that are going to stay in your long-term memory to like fully solidify there, to be like, and once they're there, they're very hard to budge. Like they are there for the most part. You know, it's complicated. Things can like change, whatever. But like it tends to be that like, and also, like, certain types of memory problems are problems with encoding memory. So the problem is that with, like, short-term memory loss is that the memories of, like, what the conversation you just had, they are not being encoded into your mind. Like, they're not being set aside for later. But retrieving memory from your childhood or whatever, that's perfectly easy. Or, like, retrieving memory from things that happened before a certain time. So I think it's like very possible that for Batilda, like, okay, the question though is like, if she does clearly remember all of these things with Dumbledore from her younger years, like, it is possible that Rita Skeeter used the Veritaserum not so much because Batilda was not capable of remembering them, but just because the process of interviewing Batilda when she wasn't under Veritaserum was just too onerous for Rita, where like their conversation was going in circles, or Batilda didn't want to talk about certain things, or like, you know, just the various things of if someone is you know, experiencing dementia or whatever, it can be like a lot more complicated of a conversation. Like even if the memories are there, it's just like, you know, they don't remember who you are. They're like, why am I talking to you about this? Anything like that. So I think it's very possible that Rita just used Veritaserum because she was like, this is simpler. With the Veritaserum, Batilda will just answer the question straightforwardly, and she doesn't care who I am or whether or not she wants to tell me these things. So, like, I think that's very possible. But also because we've seen memory work in this way in the magical world of the, like, Pensieve, where it's like, the memory is literally, like, the true memory is inside your brain, and you are capable of taking it out of your brain and putting it in the Pensieve and accessing it in that way. I think it's also possible that the Veritaserum is actually helping you access a memory that otherwise you don't remember.
To piggyback off of what you guys said, this is very much in line with what I saw with my paternal grandmother when she had dementia before she passed, where her long-term memory was much, much better than her short-term memory. And so she wouldn't remember. So she died last year at 100, and she wouldn't.
Oh, God bless.
Oh, thank you. But she would not remember what she had said 5 minutes ago or what I'd said 5 minutes ago, but she could be talking about childhood memories of when the Lindbergh baby got kidnapped. Like I'm not even joking. And I feel like that might be significant here because Bathilda Bagshot's short-term memory, I'm imagining, was not very good, but she may have had relatively lucid memories of what was going on 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And also, can I say, I'm sorry for your loss. I was commenting more so the longevity. That's crazy. That's amazing.
Oh yeah. It's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if I want to hit 100, but yeah, it is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I could see the potion working either way in this case. But
I don't know. I almost see it as like a pensive speciality. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. The human mind is so crazy that's why sometimes you can't even depend on eyewitness testimony because the human mind could be so crazy about the way that it interprets things. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that's almost like a pensive specific aspect where it like knows things that you didn't in that moment.
I think that you might be right in that, like, the fact that we see some evidence that, like, what you believe, like, you are communicating what you believe, and you're, like, I think the difference, like, when you go into a pensieve of someone's memory, like, it's technically Dumbledore's memory, for example, but it's like, it's not through his perspective. You don't get any of his emotions, beliefs, anything. It is just like, this is literally what was happening at this moment in time. Whereas the Veritaserum, I think, is a very different, like, mode of asking someone for a true recollection, in that you are asking them about, like, they are telling you their beliefs, feelings, motivations, etc.
I love that because it's so much more complicated, right?
Definitely.
Oh, it's juicy, the details.
Right. Like you're getting different type of information from them. Yeah. But that means that it's more subjective. You're not like in the pensieve, you can see everything. Like when I'm living my life, like I can only see what is in my visual field at that moment. But also there's attention. Like I'm only going to remember really the things I was paying attention to. But like in the pensieve, you're like, oh wow, like I didn't even realize this person was having a conversation over here, or like this thing was happening behind me. So it's like it's giving you a really cool, like more objective view of the moment. And the Veritaserum is giving like the very like the personal of like what was actually going on in this person's head at that moment.
Oh, that's so fun. I love it.
Definitely.
And on that very fun note, I actually do have to duck out, you guys. It's been wonderful. It's been a wonderful lunch break talking to you guys.
Definitely great meeting
Thanks for joining us, Grace. That was great.
Thank you for being here.
Of course. It's been fabulous. Thank you for having me. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Two more quick points. One was like at the very end of Crouch Under Veritaserum, we have like the last line that we sort of know what's going on with Crouch is, then Sane's smile lit his features once more and his head drooped onto his shoulder. And then after that point, he like doesn't speak anymore, and we don't see him moving, but we don't really know. The focus is no longer on him. Like he gets tied up. Professor McGonagall has her wand on him. We don't really know anything more. And I'm like, I wonder, like, why does his head droop onto his shoulder? Is this like the trance is over? The Veritaserum effects are done? Is it just are there side effects of taking Veritaserum? Like, do you lose consciousness? Like, yeah, I was just like curious about that part.
I think it's, I mean, it will take a lot of mental energy from you talking through Veritaserum. So I think when it stops working, you just reach a point of mental exhaustion.
Yeah.
And that at least the image of the head drooping and him stopping to speak had that, like, that was what I was associating with that.
And maybe it's also like a sort of, it gives you a sort of bit of a in-between space between, like, it is an indication that the effects of the potion are wearing off, maybe? That it's like, because otherwise you would go straight from you don't know where the line is to like, you know, all of a sudden someone is like speaking to you through Veritaserum, and then suddenly they're like, you know, screaming at you and being like, what are you doing? Whatever, you know, like it may be just like, it is sort of and now this is done. And now you get to figure out what to do next. So it kind of like puts them into a temporary state of unconsciousness. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of both then.
Yeah.
It might be kind of like, you know, going back to the laughing gas metaphor, it might be sort of like you're just overall very groggy when you're under kind of the influence of it. And it might be something similar to that, although, well, we'll get into this later, but I think J.K. Rowling said that you typically have to be a little groggy for the Veritaserum to not be possible to resist.
Well, he has, like, he literally, like, they put the Veritaserum in his mouth, and then they, like, did, like, renervate, like, he becomes unstunned, and then he's talking. And so I guess, like, maybe his conscious brain maybe never, like, fully transitioned from the stunned state, so maybe his sort of, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Or it's like a sort of, it's like a drugged up sort of situation where then like, I'm not sure. It's interesting. The one other thing I wanted to talk about is sort of like, how does Veritaserum work? This is just like interesting for me, because I studied narrative psychology in college, and, it's like this psychology of like, how do you tell the stories of your life? Like, how do you tell your life stories? And what I find very interesting with Veritaserum is that like, you could imagine a version of Veritaserum where you ask someone the question, like, okay, for example, like one of the kinds of questions Dumbledore asks is like, you know, and what happened tonight with the cup or whatever. And someone could just give you literally every fact of what happened tonight. Like, you know, they could just literally be like, and then I did this, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this like, but most of us, when people ask us questions, we are not giving them every single fact that we remember, every single true fact. We are creating a narrative, and we're only including the relevant information. And so clearly, like, the potion is like, like Barty Crouch Jr. is still like creating the narrative, which means that not every single piece of information is in there, but it's more like focused on the relevant pieces of information. And I just find that interesting. I just find that interesting that it is sort of like, it is still using like the normal way that his human brain would probably generally, like, it maybe is, to me, is a vote for like, it takes away your inhibitions rather than like just compels you to say any truthful thing that might be in your mind. It sort of takes away your inhibitions, but you are still telling the story you would have told otherwise. Like you're telling it the way you would tell it. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's another point for our theory on how it works. And that you have to believe the truth yourself in order to tell it. And I think that would also lead us to the conclusion that under Veritaserum, you could misunderstand a question and give a completely different answer.
That's what I wonder about that.
Or you could give an answer that to you is the relevant answer. Like, these are the relevant pieces of information, but that wasn't actually what the other person wanted. Like, and we have this all the time. What I meant. Like, we all have misunderstandings where we think that we have asked someone a certain question and then they answer it. Like, you know, they don't give all the information we would have wanted them to give. Yeah, so it shows that, like, you can't fully... Just like you were having a conversation with anyone else, like you can't fully like assume that you have gotten every single piece of relevant, truthful information.
Definitely. And yeah, I mean, it is interesting. We were touching on this earlier. I wonder what, if any, ability somebody might have to give answers that are technically true but misleading.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that if you knew that Veritaserum was coming and you were a particular type of skilled, like if you were very skilled at occlumency or resisting the Imperious Curse or stuff like that, I wonder if you could just have just enough presence of mind to be able to, maybe you can't fully resist it, but you are making more active choices. I do think that could be possible.
That lines up with the statements that both J.K. Rowling has said sort of outside of the text and sort of what Dumbledore says about Slughorn, where it sounds like you really can have, if the person, unless the person is caught off guard and kind of in a stupor like Crouch was because he just got hit with 3 different spells and one of them happened to have come from the most powerful wizard in the world.
True.
That there's that like there is a high risk of false negatives where somebody who is say guilty of the crime can or guilty of the thing they're being asked about can make it look like they're not guilty.
Yeah. You know, what you just said about Crouch being hit by like 3 different spells, I had not even considered that when it comes to that question of like Crouch sort of going unconscious potentially after Veritaserum. Like, we know that when you're hit with multiple stunning spells that it is not good for you. So it is possible that he is like, okay, technically he was unstunned, but he might be still dealing with the effects of having been hit by so many stunning spells. Mm-hmm. And the Veritaserum is like giving him just enough mind presence or whatever to be able to share this information, and then he is immediately going into this like state of being injured from being hit by all these stunning spells. That would be interesting.
Keep in mind that Dumbledore by himself, in Order of the Phoenix, was able to lay out Dawlish, Umbridge, and Fudge at the same time while they were actively trying to fight him, and hex Kingsley to maintain Kingsley's cover. And Crouch got hit by Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Snape at the same time.
Yeah. Those are 3 like very powerful spellcasters. Yeah. No, now I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I am starting to think that that is the best explanation, is that like he is like barely functioning because he's been hit by all of these stunners, and like, yes, he's technically conscious just enough to be able to communicate through Veritaserum, but then as soon as they're not asking him questions, or as soon as the Veritaserum wears off, he's like passed out. Yeah. Interesting. I wanted to talk about how hard it is to get Veritaserum. Mm-hmm. So we're told that the NEWT level students will learn to make Veritaserum during their NEWT courses. I assume that's in 7th year because we don't see it in 6th year. So presumably, like, okay, actually, I was going to say a decent portion of the population is probably capable of making it, but since Snape was Potions Master for such a long time and only took O-level students, like, it's not like huge numbers, but it's like probably at least like 8 to 10 students each year, you know?
But I want to argue against that, because maybe 8 to 9 students, depending on math at Hogwarts, which is not a thing, but a year at the time they were taking the exam. Because if I think back of the things I was capable during my final exam year, I will have forgotten like 80%.
I 100% believe.
So,
agree.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. So yes, it's like a decent portion of the population was at one point capable of making Veritaserum, even if it was just like for the day of the NEWT exam, like, you know. Yeah. But I 100% agree. Like, I actually like wrote that down as a note. I'm like, there are plenty of things that I technically learned how to do in school that like I don't remember how to do anymore,
yes.
like calculus, you know?
Yeah.
So if you're not practicing this regularly, it's like, yeah. So I'd say there are a decent number of people who have learned how to do it. Probably not that many people who are like currently capable of it.
Mm-hmm.
All we know about like the making of it, Snape claims to Umbridge that it takes a full moon cycle to mature. He might have just been saying that to get her off his case. But I would say that's kind of a risky gambit because for all he knows, Umbridge already knows how long Veritaserum takes or whatever. So I think that's probably the truth. But I find it interesting that Umbridge is getting her Veritaserum from Snape and not from the Ministry, which to me shows either or both that she has a lot of implicit trust of Snape. And I think we do see that as being true. Like, she is saying sort of like, Lucius always spoke most highly of you. You know, she clearly sees Snape as someone who is going to be on her side.
Mm-hmm.
But it also could show that even the Ministry doesn't have, like, huge stocks of Veritaserum to spare. Because if they did, I feel like Umbridge would have a bunch of Veritaserum that she would be trying to use on students, like, constantly. And so,
I'm not
I don't
sure.
know.
I'm not sure, because Umbridge is clearly doing things at the school that she doesn't want Fudge to know, like torturing students, for example.
Yes.
So maybe Veritaserum, or the use of Veritaserum, falls under restrictions, and she would have to get permission for that.
Yeah.
So
that's possible.
Yeah.
That's totally possible.
I'm not sure.
I think we don't know enough. We'll talk later in our regulations and ethics section about, like, what are the rules about Veritaserum, because as far as I can tell, there are none. But it is possible that there are rules. I just see no evidence of it.
There should be so many rules.
Yes. And we see that Rita Skeeter talks, she says, like, oh, you know, for certain points, like, Bathilda Bagshot was well worth the effort it took for me to procure Veritaserum. And that suggests, like, the effort it took, like, potentially could suggest that it was illegal and she had to go through some black market way, except why would you write that in a book? Like, that is weird. Or that it's very rare. And, like, the way she writes it is, like, maybe makes me think that it's rare rather than very expensive. Like, I think she might have worded it very, like, a bit differently if she was, like, well worth the money I spent on getting Veritaserum. Like, she says the effort it took, so that makes me think it's rare. So I guess my best theory, because it does seem like we don't have that much evidence, but it seems like potentially it is hard to get. My best theory of why that would be is probably that the ingredients are very rare and or very expensive.
I think so too.
Yeah. So it might be hard to make big batches of it. It might be, and this might explain, like, why it's only used in extreme circumstances and not super regularly. I think we're about to get into some of the sort of legal, like, in whether it's being used in the courtroom or whatever. And like, if it is quite rare, that could explain some of the, like, inconsistency of when it might be used in a courtroom or not, is that, like, maybe in certain extreme circumstances it's used in a courtroom, but most of the time it isn't. Or, like, I think that's just an interesting part to bring into the conversation. If there's, like, an assumption of rarity, then that makes some of the conversation around it make a bit more sense to me. But yeah.
In my mind, the ingredients are rare, but also it is a very hard potion to do.
I think it has to be a hard potion to do, yeah.
And also, it's a potion where you really have to be sure that it was done the right way. Because if you have something like the pick-me-up potion and it doesn't make you quite as healthy, then that doesn't hurt anyone. But if you do something like Veritaserum and forget a step, it feels like the consequences would be so much more severe. So there are probably only a handful of potion masters you would trust doing that. And then they would need the rare or expensive ingredients. And then probably also, like with liquid luck, you can't do a big batch. You only have
small batches.
Batches, and then
And
maybe
it takes a month. And
looking at Polyjoe's potion, you like this ingredient needs to be picked at full moon there, and this one needs to be brewed in a cemetery or something like that. So it might be a very complicated, also like time lengthy process to get that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, shall we move on to our regulations and ethics section?
Oh, yes.
This is going to be an interesting.
I'm so excited. So I went down a rabbit hole there, and I'm going to talk for a little bit. And I apologize. It's not all wizards, but I thought it was so incredibly interesting because, as I said, the author tends to take things out of the real world and make them wizardy. And there is something called the truth serum. So it's not one thing. There's research on truth serum. I don't know the one common ingredient anymore. There is one common ingredient that most of those serums have. It also doesn't matter, but it's basically a psychotic drug that makes people speak the truth. And I, in my rabbit hole, I read Is Truth Serum Torture by Linda Keller in American University International Law Review, of I think 80-page paper that I speed read through, and I forgot most of it. But again, there are different variants of it. At one time, there was the thought maybe LSD might be a truth serum and was tested, but was found even more unreliable than what they have now. And there are cases, according to Linda Keller, I didn't research the cases, but according to her, there are cases that has been used in trying not to be political too incorrect, but the usual suspects, the USA, USSR, maybe Russia, I think we're not quite sure, and also India quite a lot, even I think in court scenes, which is incredibly fascinating and horrifying. Also because the ethics and morality is very questionable around that. There is not much research about it. And while it might, or some people in certain agencies think that to be a good tool to use to extract the truth out of someone, it is also suggested that it just makes people talkative, which does not mean they are telling you the truth. And not only do I mean by that they're only telling you the truth they know as the truth, but also they might just be talking like someone who is on drugs and might just like not deliberately misleading you maybe, though who knows, maybe that is also possible, but also just talking. So the question is how useful and how reliable it is, because if you just like, if we do a very basic version of that and think someone is very drunk, I think most of us can have situations where we had to deal with someone very drunk who would just not shut up, but not necessarily tell you the truth when you ask them a question, but they would talk. They would tell you something, and sometimes the truth, sometimes not. So a bit like that.
And when you ask them, are you drunk? They're like, no, I'm not drunk.
Not at all.
So not necessarily in a state to like accurately assess the truth, you know?
Yeah, but you might sometimes get something out of them that they would not tell you when they're sober. So for certain governments and certain agencies in those governments, this is of course a topic of interest, which brings us to ethics and legality. So Linda Keller at least says that there is the argument from those countries who use it or research on it that physical torture is prohibited and truth serum is not physical torture, which I think is not quite right, because forcing someone to drink something in order to make them delusional and agreeable, talkative, whatever it is absolutely physical torture. And then also emotional torture is also torture, which is part of, there's the UN Declaration on the Protection of All Persons from Being Subjected to Torture, and so on. It goes on a little bit. And they include mental pain. But yeah, international law is a terribly complicated subject, and it really depends how you interpret things. So if the use of truth serum is torture or isn't, it really depends on who you ask. But as I just said, the UN Declaration on the Protection of All Persons from Being Subjected to Torture, not that wizards care about any of that, but still want to point it out. In Article 1 of that declaration, it says, torture means any act by which severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, is intentionally inflicted for such purposes as obtaining information or confession. Torture constitutes an aggravated and deliberate form of cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. That was part of my rabbit hole. I have a couple of more like little tidbits of my rabbit hole later, but
Interesting. I'm so curious. So they really have done no scientific studies on this?
I think there have been studies, but they're so small
on the reliability. Yeah,
and also it's very hard to test reliability.
Well, actually,
for truth.
So this is what I remember from this, and you know, this was a while ago, but it's stuck in my head, so I'm pretty sure this is accurate. I remember that with this sort of hypnosis, like when they were looking at like hypnosis and truth-telling, like basically what they did is that they would have people, let's say, like read a really long paragraph of information or whatever, and they're trying to remember the things in that, and then they would have people try to recall information without hypnosis and see how many facts they got right. Mm-hmm. And then they would put people under hypnosis and see how many facts they could recall. I guess those are separate groups of people, I should say. Mm-hmm. And they found that people under hypnosis recalled more facts and also made up a whole lot of stuff that was never in the original thing. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't actually seem that hard to study, but people have to be willing to actually take this truth serum and perhaps would not want to. And also people have to fund these studies and care about having big enough sample sizes and all of that. So
one thing that I think also is worth noting, and I want to be clear here. And that info you gave is fascinating. I really did not know much of any of that. If I like anything I say about whether Veritaserum in the Harry Potter books is or isn't torture, I should note here, I'm not making that claim about real world truth serum because I don't know enough about it, and I'm not sure if it operates the same way that Veritaserum does. But one issue I think with using truth serum in the real world justice system is, I was thinking about this with a polygraph test, lie detector tests, is that one of the reasons that they're at least in the United States inadmissible in court is that people argue about like how high their accuracy rate is, but everyone agrees it's not 100%. Mm-hmm. There's a certain number of false negatives and false positives that everybody agrees happens, like where a guilty person passes a lie detector test or an innocent person fails a lie detector test. And if you are operating under, which many of these countries may not be, but if you're operating under an innocent until proven guilty standard, you don't really want to be using a test that doesn't have 100% accuracy, at least not Well, no, I won't even do a qualifier there. You really don't want to be using that. I do think one issue I should mention with Veritaserum is that in the situation where it's used on Crouch Jr., because I think part of why I would not consider it torture in the wizarding world, I'm not speaking about real truth serum because I don't know enough about it, but it seems like in the wizarding world, most of the ethical concerns about it would be around privacy, due process, innocent people potentially getting, and I have reasons why I think, innocent people might potentially be sort of implicated by Veritaserum, but it doesn't seem like it causes physical or mental distress very much in the wizarding world. And while this was an extreme case, and because I generally would agree that Veritaserum is wildly unethical to use in the wizarding world in the vast majority of cases, it seems like in the case of Crouch Jr., it was the most humane way they could have gotten the information out of him. Other than maybe, I guess they could have extracted his memories, but compared to, say, Crucioing him, it seems like it was more humane using the Veritaserum.
I mean, yes, I agree. It's more humane than torture, like physically torturing him. But I think then we're like kind of rating methods of torture, and obviously some are worse than the others, but still remain torture. And I know that I'm now more taking the Muggle approach, but I think pain can also be mental. So the question is a bit: is it not torture because getting the information out is not painful? But then it's maybe torture because the mental pain comes after being awake again, and then also the loss of autonomy and ability to control thoughts and words, or the loss of the control over one's mind, is severe mental suffering. And again, international law does not apply to wizards, and also is in the Muggle world also flawed. But the International Convent on Civil and Political Rights, it's a General Assembly resolution, quite old, 1966, says no one should be, it's not no one, but paraphrasing, no one should be compelled to testify against himself or to confess guilt.
Right, yep.
Right.
So Fifth Amendment in the US, yeah.
That point, you do make someone testify against themselves.
Yeah.
If they agree to take Veritaserum, that would be a different thing, I think. It still leaves the we don't know if they actually have 100% of the truth question open, but then I would argue, while it's still not a wise option, it's not torture. But if you force someone to drink Veritaserum, then you take away their ability to control their mind, which is in order to testify against themselves unwillingly, and that is mental torture.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, this is bringing up a question that I've never asked myself before, which is what is the definition of torture? But to me, that feels much less relevant than I think that I totally agree with all of the ethical considerations that you're bringing up as this is unethical. It is wrong to force someone to take some sort of substance that is causing them not to have control over their brain, not have control over what they say, causing them to testify against themselves. In the real world, it is some sort of psychotic drug. Nobody should be forced to take a psychotic drug against their will. And also, with Veritaserum, we haven't heard of any sort of specific side effects, but with other types of drugs, everyone's brain is different and people could have horrific side effects to something. So, this is very fascinating.
One question, I'm actually curious to get both of your takes on this, So I think we all agree in the vast majority of circumstances, it's unethical to make somebody take Veritaserum. And I think we all agree that it's very, very ethically dubious to ever use it in court or have it admissible in court. Do we think it was unethical? Because I would argue that it probably was ethical for Dumbledore to make Crouch Jr. take it under that very specific set of circumstances. Do the two of you think it was ethically dubious for him to do that?
That is really interesting because I don't have any problems with Dumbledore doing this.
Me neither.
I think it was necessary in this moment. He really needed that information. It is like time was of the essence in everything related to like understanding about Voldemort coming back. Time was of the essence. They needed to know the information. I don't have a problem with it. I think the problem I have with it is actually more, which doesn't make any sense, I know, but like, I have less of a problem with him doing it than I would in like a setting where the Ministry of Magic was like forcing him for trial purposes, and I don't know why that is.
I would agree with you. I would agree with you.
Yeah, which is kind of dumb, but that's how I feel.
No, I completely agree. Because you're talking about getting information in a very time-sensitive situation for pragmatic purposes versus getting evidence for a criminal conviction.
Right.
Okay, so at first I said, I was like, I completely disagree. It's completely unethical. And I still think it's unethical. But when you said you would feel different when the ministry is doing it, I think I would also feel differently. So first of all, why I think it's unethical. It's torture remains torture. And if we permit it once, then we will always find another reason for, like, who is to say that is the boundary where torture is the right thing to do or not. But I agree it is worse when basically the state, the government uses torture as a tool to get their will than a private person. We can argue if Dumbledore actually is a private person or kind of semi-government here. So yes, absolutely. If the ministry would be doing that, that would be 100% worse. I think it's very much Dumbledore-esque that he does that, because he thinks the goal justifies the way. And he has been kind of stumbling over this kind of way of thinking in his youth, and he still has that kind of way of thinking. Because for him, he needs that information now, and this is the maybe only way at that time to get that information out.
Yeah,
and
not
I
enough
agree,
time to extract the memories.
I agree that it was crucial for him to have all that. It's still not ethical, and it's still not the right thing to do.
This is interesting because, like, I think this brings us to a broader question that everyone has different feelings about of sort of like ends justifies the means, where like when we learn in the 7th book about Dumbledore's youth and this sort of like him saying, oh, doing this for the greater good. And like at first Harry is like, this is so disgusting. He's talking about like this sort of greater good. But then we see this moment towards the end of the 7th book where Aberforth is saying like, well, my brother was always like, you know, putting like doesn't care if people get hurt, if it's like for some bigger purpose or whatever. And Harry is like, well, sometimes you need to do things for the greater good. And sometimes the ends do justify the means. And I guess I'm sort of the opinion that sometimes the ends do justify the means. And I think everyone has different feelings, but like that's how I feel in this moment, as I'm like, yeah, I think that, and I think that some of this is like there's a difference between legal morality. I think when things have to be put into laws, we put the strictest possible version of it.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to sort of personal ethics and moral decisions that we make, I think we often make much more squishy decisions where we are we are sort of in the moment being like, well, do I personally in this moment think ends justify the means? Yeah, I kind of do. Let's just I'm just gonna do it. And I think that is kind of like how we live our lives. And some people always are going to be very strict and be like, if there's a rule of how to do things, I'm always going to do it this way. And other people are going to be like, I think this is a squishy situation and I'm not.
But also, I want to say that just because I say that's unethical, if now, let's say someone very, very close to me, dear to me, was in danger and the only way to save them would be to torture someone, I would maybe do that. It would still not make it ethical. It would still not make it right. And everyone has the right to tell me that is not ethical. And I think that brings us back to the point that we talked about. I think, Charles, you made that earlier, that you think most things are explainable. And I actually think everything is explainable. Sometimes you just don't have the explanation, but in theory, everything is explainable. So you can explain why Dumbledore does that, or you can, in my scenario, explain why I would be doing that. It still doesn't make it ethical, and I still would do it.
I would argue that there are situations where the two options available to you, one is mildly unethical, and if you don't do that mildly unethical thing, the other option is even more unethical.
Yes.
So in that case, is it actually unethical to choose the less ethical option, or is it more, or are you actually making the ethical choice? So I think that's where it gets very complicated. You could still
just not do anything. So if the option is I can either crucio him or do Veritaserum, I could still do nothing, which would be the ethical choice, or talk to him, which does not help me.
Would it be the ethical choice? Because if you don't have any of this information, and I'm not necessarily talking about this specific thing, but it could be, if you don't have any of that information, then you can't act properly against Voldemort, which means that Voldemort is going to have, there are certain things where it's like, is it more ethical to do nothing? Because if you do nothing, other innocent people could be hurt. There can be situations like that.
I think that maybe depends on the definition or difference between ethics and morality. So yes, me doing or not doing something unethical might mean that I make it possible for someone else to do something terribly unethical. And I now have the moral choice to make what I do going on from here. But also, that is also always the where does it end?
Yeah.
When does one when is it justified to do that? Morally justified, which I would still argue it's still not ethical. But maybe you're morally justified in doing that, or it can be morally justified is the wrong word. It morally explained why you do that.
Well, it's interesting. For me, I definitely have moral absolutist tendencies where I think that there are certain things that, regardless of pragmatism, are inherently wrong to do no matter what. But then I also think there's situations where you have to do something as a necessary evil, and then I also think there's situations where it's sort of in the gray zone. So, and everybody has kind of their own, because and I'll just I'll give a brief Harry Potter example. I'll give a brief personal real world example for me is that. So I don't think, and I won't get off on why I don't think this because that could be a whole other episode. I do believe that Dumbledore always planned for Harry to survive, but needed him to think he wasn't going to. And that, in that situation, the level of manipulation was ethically dubious, but arguably within the gray zone. Whereas I would say if he legitimately did plan for Harry to die, that would have been inherently unethical regardless of the greater good. For me, sort of a real-world example is I'm 100% on moral absolutist grounds opposed to the death penalty under any circumstances. I think that, like, I am totally will ethically justify self-defense killings as a necessary evil. Mm-hmm. And then I think certain types of vigilantism are kind of like somebody killing somebody who killed their family member are sort of in a gray zone of, I don't condone it, but I'm not going to really condemn somebody much for it. And I think that most of us, unless we just think the ends always justify the means, or we just think nothing ethically dubious is ever okay, no matter what the trade-offs, I think most of us are in between. We're kind of in the middle between those two extremes.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah. I think my biggest problem is that I see Dumbledore as an authority here and acting as an authority figure and not as the concerned family. If you understand where I'm coming from.
I understand. It's an interesting. He wears so many hats that it's kind of an interesting situation because he's the headmaster of a government school, but he's not acting, for example, in his capacity as chief warlock or member of the Wizengamot. He's not acting in that capacity when he does this, even though he has these roles. And then by the end of Goblet of Fire, he's actively working kind of on opposite sides of the government, but he is also he has those roles. So it is a weird, we talked about, I think we're back to the gray zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's where we can take it back to the wizarding world, because now we're putting ethics and morality of the Muggle world on the wizarding world. Because while Fudge did not use Veritaserum as the government authority, he also wasn't concerned with the use of Veritaserum, just with the result.
This brings us to the question of sort of the regulation of Veritaserum. And the only time we ever hear about regulation of Veritaserum is when Snape tells Harry, now the use of this potion is controlled by very strict ministry guidelines. Mm-hmm. We don't know what those guidelines are, and as far every single piece of evidence I see in the text other than that says that there are none. So I'm going to give a few spaces where we see the lack of guidelines.
Yep.
So there's no clear regulation on who can be in possession of Veritaserum. So Snape has Veritaserum. Mm-hmm. We have to assume that that is legal for him to have Veritaserum. It's not like a drug where you wouldn't be able to possess it. So that already is kind of interesting, that it seems like anyone can own it. Dumbledore uses some on Barty Crouch, and then he has no compunction in telling Fudge that he used it on Barty Crouch. He's not keeping any secrets there. Fudge is like, well, do we actually trust that? But he never brings up the fact that Dumbledore used the potion as something where Dumbledore overstepped. Mm-hmm. And you'd think if it was illegal, then Fudge would try to prosecute Dumbledore about this. For this after this conversation, because he now is trying to take Dumbledore down in any way possible. This would be an obvious way to do it. So it does not appear to be illegal for Dumbledore to use it on Barty Crouch. Umbridge tries to use it on the students. That means nothing, though, because Fudge has already, we know, changed laws for Umbridge. And also she's happy to break the laws. So that doesn't mean anything. So Professor Slughorn, Dumbledore says he'd be expecting Veritaserum. This is about the memory. I would be astonished if he has not carried an antidote to Veritaserum with him ever since I coerced him into giving me this travesty of a recollection. I don't know exactly what Dumbledore means here. This potentially suggests that Dumbledore used Veritaserum to coerce Slughorn, and if he did, that's wild. And it's wild if Slughorn didn't press charges there. That would mean that it's not illegal. But either that or he coerced him more verbally is kind of how I would see.
That's what I'm picturing.
Yeah, me too. Because otherwise he would have the memory.
Right. Unless there was some weird thing Slughorn did. So I am assuming he coerced him verbally. Mm-hmm. But since then he has been worried that Dumbledore might resort to using Veritaserum, which to me also suggests that it's not illegal just because,
Yeah.
It seems weird that he would think that Dumbledore would use an illegal substance on him. If he did, he could go to court over it, and therefore, it just seems weird. And then Rita Skeeter admits, in a published book, that she used Veritaserum on Bathilda. And, Bathilda is, a vulnerable old lady. And there's no, she seems to have no fear that somebody would press legal charges on her for that. Of course, there's the possibility here that laws have changed since Goblet of Fire, when Snape first says that Veritaserum is being regulated by strict ministry guidelines, because it's possible that either Fudge or Scrimgeour may have loosened the restrictions because of the sort of wartime, or because they're mobilizing against Dumbledore, they want to be able to use it more. But still, even before that point, we just see no evidence of any regulations.
Yeah. I want to have a chat with Percy about law. And
Seriously.
Law. With the book, just a comment on that, I think that the book might be a little bit different because most probably Rita Skeeter has some kind of phrase in the book that protects her from all legal consequences, saying oh, this is just a fantasy story I've written up. So
that seems wild, but we never see any legal consequences for all of the falsehoods that she's spreading. So it's possible. It's possible that the laws are just really bad. It's also when this book was published, it was in the middle of Voldemort's regime, and maybe she just thought everyone had bigger fish to fry, and maybe
True. Yeah.
Actually, sorry, this is not in the... Sorry, I was wrong. This is not in her book that she says this. This is in the newspaper
interview?
Article about her book.
Okay. Yeah, then that's
so
different.
That's before... Well, I don't know if that's any... that's still, in print for everyone to read, but it is before Voldemort's regime.
Different.
So it is less of okay, they have bigger fish to fry than me.
I mean, maybe Snape just, he might take things out of proportion while talking with Harry, which he is known to do that. It might just be you have to fill out a form afterwards telling the ministry I've used it because of this reason, and someone just gets it, then the ministry puts a stamp on it, and then that's it.
They're cool, you got information from this old lady Bathilda Bagshot for your book. That's totally fine. You can do whatever.
Yeah, maybe you can just put a little cross on it's for research.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I think it's also possible that and this would be kind of ridiculous because, okay, there's no evidence that using Veritaserum on an adult is a crime. But it is possible that there are guidelines for teachers using it on students at Hogwarts.
That might be
where
true.
It's this is a minor, and their parents will freak out if they hear that you use this. So if you're a teacher, as much as you might want to know if your student cheated on their exam, you cannot use this on a student. So it might be he doesn't say laws. He doesn't say laws. He says
regulations.
Very strict ministry guidelines.
Guidelines.
Even that's okay.
I might be reaching here, but it also occurs to me that it may have been, this might be a stretch, but I'm just picturing possibly a conversation where Dumbledore told Snape, you're not allowed to use this on students, but Snape didn't obviously, I can totally see Snape not wanting to tell Harry, Dumbledore told me I'm not allowed to use it. Because that would probably be a sore spot if they had that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, might be true.
And very strict ministry guidelines. It is possible that the guidelines are yeah, you can't use it on a student except if you get parental permission or if you, have a very extreme reason, such as X, Y, or Z, to use it. So it might be that he's just saying, I can't use it right now, but if you continue stealing things from my store cupboard, I could actually use it. It could not be that strict, to be honest, and it could be more just as teachers, we are told that we are not allowed to use this on our students except in X, Y, or Z cases.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like that.
And it might be sort of students, which is so ridiculous. It's if you're a minor, of course, what a horrible thing to do to someone. But if you're an adult, then really you should be watching your drink better so nothing gets slipped into it. It's that's really on you. Pretty wild.
As always, lawless land.
Yeah. Charles, I think you were going to talk a little bit about a warrant.
Yeah, so it doesn't seem like you have to get a warrant to use it.
Yeah.
And the Wizarding World doesn't really seem to have the same level of requirements for that at least on paper, and I do stress on paper, that the UK and US Muggle worlds have. It's one thing also that I think is worth noting here is the Ministry's compunctions about using it in court seem to be pretty much exclusively about the risk of guilty people getting off rather than innocent people getting wrongly convicted.
Or any ethical concerns around forcing people to testify against themselves or whatever.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, definitely not that.
Yeah, because there's certain situations where it would, for example, even if Veritaserum wouldn't be, would not be a viable option or would potentially lead to a false negative, you could absolutely, I would think, use memories, extract memories from an accused person to see if they were innocent or not, because the one time we see a memory that's been tampered with, in Slughorn's case, it's pretty obvious. Yeah. It's like when you see an AI-generated image and the limbs look deformed. It's a little bit like that. So, and I think the Ministry doesn't do that in cases like Harry's hearing or Sirius's trial, because the Ministry tends to, and you see the reverse of this with Lucius getting off with a very dubious defense during the First Wizarding War. It seems like the Ministry usually works backwards, where they decide, okay, do we want to convict or acquit this person? And then sort of work backwards from that to get the result that they want.
Yes, it really does seem like that. I do wonder, though, I'm not sure, we don't have any evidence that you can actually force someone to give one of their memories in the same way that you could force someone to take Veritaserum.
I think except for if we take the Fantastic Beast movies.
Oh, I don't even remember that happening in Fantastic Beasts.
I think it's before they want to... I've forgotten the name. They want to execute her and
Tina?
They take out her happy memories.
Yeah. I'm going to ignore Fantastic Beasts.
But, no. Feel free to ignore that.
Other than that,
into my mind.
Or else, Dumbledore probably would just sneak up behind Slughorn and steal the memory. It doesn't seem like you can force someone to give you a memory.
But even the fact that it's not offered as an option,
right.
It's never floated as an option, that Dumbledore doesn't ask Fudge, in Order of the Phoenix with Harry's hearing, hey, would you be willing, if I get Harry to agree to extract his memories, would you be willing to use that to assess,
totally.
The fact that it's never, or that Sirius doesn't think to offer that, the fact that kind of makes me think the Ministry doesn't want to get memories that could interfere with the result they're trying to get.
I totally agree. yeah, like even like the sort of eyewitness accounts, you would think an eyewitness might want to give their memories. We don't see any evidence. I mean, we do only see one pensieve in the whole series, so it might be that, like, I would assume, though, that, like, somewhere in the Department of Mysteries they have a pensieve. Like, I don't know. Like, it doesn't seem like this is
Probably,
the only
yes.
one, but it is rare. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, like, what do? You bring the whole, like, courtroom inside the pensieve with you to watch the memory. Like, it's a little, like, the logistics are a little hard, but, like, I guess why not? Can we actually just read out the sort of, I hadn't realized that J.K. Rowling had actually, like, talked about sort of Veritaserum being used in trials or not used in trials. Can we just, like, read those quotes out so that we can dig into those? I'll read one of them, and then, Charles, do you want to read the other that you put? Okay, so someone asked, question, why isn't Veritaserum used in interrogations? The answer was, it is, but skilled wizards can avoid its effects by using antidotes and charms. A gifted occlumens could also resist Veritaserum. All right, Charles, do you want to read the other one?
So, Veritaserum works best upon the unsuspecting, the vulnerable, and those insufficiently skilled in one way or another to protect themselves against it. Barty Crouch had been attacked before the potion was given to him and was still very groggy. Otherwise, he could have employed a range of measures against the potion. He might have sealed his own throat and faked a declaration of innocence, transformed the potion into something else before it touched his lips, or employed occlumency against its effects. In other words, just like every other kind of magic within the books, Veritaserum is not infallible. As some wizards can prevent themselves being attacked and others cannot, it is an unfair and unreliable tool to use at a trial. Sirius might have volunteered to take the potion had he been given the chance, but he was never offered it. Mr. Crouch Sr., power mad, and increasingly unjust in the way he was treating suspects, threw him into Azkaban on the admittedly rather convincing testimony of many eyewitnesses. The sad fact is that even if Sirius had told the truth under the influence of the potion, Mr. Crouch could still have insisted that he was using trickery to render himself immune to it.
Thank you. Yeah. There are sections of both of these quotes that I find kind of, like, okay. I don't know. Like, I don't find them very convincing. Especially the parts about, like, the kinds of magic you could do, or, like, using antidotes or charms or whatever. I'm like, in a trial setting, presumably you wouldn't have your wand on you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're not going to be able to take an antidote, and you're not going to be able to do most of those charms. Like, I guess when it comes to, like, some very talented wizards could use wandless magic to do some of this stuff. Like, I think if Dumbledore was being forced, like, okay, I'm sure he'd use occlumency, but, like, I think he would be able to do it. So I think that probably there are certain people who have been put on trial where they're like, yeah, this person, we can't trust that Veritaserum is going to work on them because they are too powerful of a wizard. But I'm guessing the average wizard cannot do any of that magic without a wand and doesn't know occlumency. So I'm like, it doesn't seem like a particularly compelling reason why it's not being used in trials.
Yeah. But then the average wizard wouldn't be on trial as a powerful dark wizard.
Yeah, but, like, a lot of the trials are not for being a powerful dark wizard. They're for other, like, most trials in the world are not for, like, doing something truly terrible.
No, that's true. That's true. But then, like, you wouldn't use the most extreme means to get to the truth.
Yeah.
Like, if you get a parking ticket, you also will not, like, scour the internet for any and all, like, sources of information or cameras that might have caught that. So I think
yeah. I'm guessing that, like, to me, like, I'm gonna kind of, okay, I do find the point about, like, being an occlumens interesting with Veritaserum. Like, that speaks to me as something that is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other, like, magic things that you could do, I'm like, those seem a little less compelling. But if we put all of that aside, what would make sense to me of reasons that wizards actually don't use Veritaserum super often in trials. Like, maybe they use it sometimes, but not all the time. Like, if we were talking about an ethical society, the main reason would be that it's unethical. But we're putting that aside because we know they don't care.
Yeah.
So I would say the idea that it is very rare, and so therefore you are not going to waste it on every single trial. Like, you are not going to, for a case of underage magic like Harry, use Veritaserum because it's like, who cares? And so I think it's very rare. I think that if you have a particularly, like, dark wizard or whatever that maybe, or, like, talented wizard, you don't trust that it's going to work. And also, I think that, like, and this connects to what Charles has been saying, I think they just don't care about justice being served.
No, like, no. They're very corrupt government.
Like, I think that the best explanation of why they, like, ethical concerns aside, the best explanation of why they don't actually use Veritaserum, other than rarity, is that they don't care about innocent people being wrongfully convicted.
Yeah, I'm not sure I completely agree with that, because again, like, using the rarity, you would only use it for very important cases, which then arguably has probably powerful wizards, and then those might know occlumency, or other people in the courtroom have very strong sense of they should either be guilty or not be guilty, and there's the chance of an imperious curse influencing what truth they're telling. So I think absolutely the government is corrupt, and they don't care about the truth that much. But I think it's not the only reason.
Yeah, I guess what I would say is, like, I don't think that the rarity means you'd only use it for particularly powerful wizards, because I think the rarity means you only use it in situations where you don't have very much evidence. Like, I feel like it would be in situations where it's like we see where there is enough other evidence. Like, if there's a lot of eyewitnesses, they're like, well, why waste Veritaserum? We see with Morphin, like, he is admitting to things, even if he didn't do it. So, like, Dumbledore specifically says, like, the Ministry called upon Morphin. They did not need to question him to use Veritaserum or legitimacy. Like, he admitted to it. So they're like, why would we waste this? So I wonder if it's, like, in specific situations where they believe there is wrongdoing, or believe, like, where there's not very much evidence either way, or, like, a sort of he said, she said of sort of, like, there are only two people there and they're both saying different things, and you're just like, well, I don't know which one's true. That maybe in those cases you use Veritaserum. And we don't have any evidence that they don't, like, you know.
No, we don't.
So they might just, like, yes, in certain situations they use Veritaserum because they don't have enough evidence without it. But they're not going to waste it otherwise. And maybe if there's, like, particularly dark wizards or whatever, powerful wizards, I think their go-to is just, well, we think this is a dark wizard, so we should just throw them in Azkaban. Like,
I think so too, yeah.
Like, they're like, why should we go to the effort? Like, and this, I was thinking about this, of sort of, like, the, like, all of this stuff about Veritaserum, and, like, I feel like, okay, the purpose of trials in the wizarding world does not seem to be for justice to be served in the best possible way. Like, that's not the purpose. The purpose seems to be, like, to neutralize threats or perceived threats. And to me, that, like, makes me think about, like, Wizarding society they see themselves as always like being under siege of like, they are this small minority. Mm-hmm. They are terrified of the idea of Muggles finding them out, of what Muggles might do if they find them out, etc. And they're also scared of like this threat from within of like these dark wizards. So they see themselves as like under threat, under siege. And so I think like they make a lot of their decisions around justice from that point of view, where they're like, the point of the legal system is to, as quickly as possible, neutralize any potential threats. And they do so not in a very like systematic way of like, these are the laws about how we're allowed to do it. They're sort of like, they do it in whatever way works best in that specific circumstance. So sometimes that means a trial. Sometimes that doesn't mean a trial. Sometimes the trial is conducted in one way. Sometimes it's conducted in another way. And there seems to be an extreme willingness to sacrifice justice for an individual over the sort of perceived safety of the collective. And yeah, they're not really thinking, they don't care that much about someone being in prison for a crime that they didn't commit. They don't care at all, it seems like, about the punishment fitting the crime. Like, you know, everyone goes to Azkaban. Like, no matter what.
One point in your life. Something you have on your bucket list.
Yeah, like, you're going to Azkaban if you commit a crime, and like, the difference is, like, do you go for 2 months or do you go forever? Like, it's not a difference of, like, different types of punishment.
Yeah.
It's more, the trials are, like, being completely run by the biases of whoever is conducting the trial. Like, it's often more of a show than actual attempt to serve justice. And so I think that this sort of open question of, like, well, is Veritaserum used? How is it used? When is it used? Because, yeah, kind of speaks to the fact that, like, there is not a standardization of how trials are run, and it's not, like, the focus is, as Charles was saying, of, like, you kind of have something that you were hoping to get out of the trial, which is, like, we think this person should go to Azkaban. Let's make that happen.
I just had another thought, tying things that we talked about earlier together with this, is that I think, yes, the ministry or the justice system wants to take out threats, but they also want to influence public's opinion with their decision-making. Totally. And now, if you take someone, let's say Harry at that point, and give him Veritaserum, he would speak the truth, which would not be very helpful to influence the opinion of the public. But even if you take someone who has done something like, let's say, Barty Crouch Jr. when he first was sent to Azkaban, and then he would tell his whole story with his father, how he treated him, that would influence the public's opinion. They would still think they're guilty, but it would influence the public's opinion and view of him and view of the government as a whole. So, because apart from, and I know Grace would argue against me if she was still here, apart from Voldemort, I don't think we see anyone who's like truly inherently evil, but everyone, as we said at the beginning, can, like, their actions can be explained, and through explaining,
so maybe Bellatrix, but yeah,
start to feel, okay.
But no, go on. I
start
agree.
to feel like a sort of like, at least partly, you start to feel empathetic, and that is not good for influencing public's opinion.
Yeah, and it seems like because trials in the Muggle world can go on like forever.
Yeah,
and I think they just want it to be over as quickly as possible. Like, the trials we see in the Pensieve, and I know they're not, like, the most typical trials or whatever, because it's like Barty Crouch was, like, he wasn't putting most people on trial. He was just sending them to Azkaban. The people he was putting on trial is often, like, a bit of a show trial. But they are so quick, and there's, like, no time for, like, evidence, eyewitness testimonies. There's, like, nothing. It's just, like, Barty Crouch will just be like, these are my opinions. Let's vote.
Just guilty. That's fine.
Like, I'll ask you one question, maybe.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and I mean, maybe this also just speaks to the fact that Wizarding Society is small, that there just aren't enough people to, like, have certain people just be sitting in trial for months.
Well,
like,
obviously, if everyone is in Azkaban.
everyone's in Azkaban. Like, it's just, like, I wonder if it's just, like, part of it is, like, pragmatism of, like, we don't have time for those long trials where we're spending all this time on evidence, where the lawyers are arguing in defense of the the person on trial. Like, I just wonder if it's like, yeah, we need these to happen fast. Like, we don't have enough of a, like, our system is small because it has to be small, and therefore we have to make sacrifices.
Two things. First of all, I think Fudge says point blank in Order of the Phoenix that he wants Harry's trial over with that day. And
Yes,
literally
yes.
when Dumbledore says, because it's not as if it's going to take a week to get Dobby in there. Like, he basically says, I can get him in here right now. And
Yes.
Fudge says, no, we don't have time for, we don't have, I guess, 10 minutes for that, you know, and, you know, it also, the size of the Wizarding World would explain another thing I've thought about for a while is that, and I don't think the UK system is radically different from the US in the regard I'm about to explain, because so much of the US court system was modeled after the UK's anyway, but like there's not much in the Wizarding World, and I think this goes back to what you said about the size of the Wizarding World, that this may have something to do with it, size and small size and corruption, is that there's not really much pretext of the judge being supposed to be a neutral third party or a separate branch from the other branches of the government, or of any idea of conflict of interest, because you've got the equivalent of the president or prime minister essentially operating as a judicial official, which is ostensibly in Muggle US and UK, I think, a no-no. And then also you've got, like, definitely in the US, and I would think in the UK, even if somebody was a judge, like Crouch Jr., they would never be allowed near a case where their son was a defendant.
Right, totally, yeah.
But if you've got three judges, then maybe there's not a way around that.
Yeah. And, like, we do hear that, like, Amelia Bones is supposed to be pretty fair and unbiased, but, like, she's supposed to be the one deciding Harry's case, and then suddenly Fudge is in charge. Like, she's still in the room, but, like, Fudge is clearly the one who is, like, leading it. So it's like, yeah, you're totally right. Yeah. I was going to say, like, when I was thinking about, like, okay, Veritaserum in trials, like, we never see it used, but, like, we don't see the most typical trials, but, like, we do see a lot of trials, or, like, lack of trials or whatever, and I'm like, it just gives me the sense that there is no, like, typical trial in the Wizarding World. It's like, there is peacetime where Hagrid goes to Azkaban with no trial. Then there's, like, kind of end of wartime where Sirius goes to Azkaban with no trial. We see, like, even Buckbeak has this, like, sham trial where, like, nobody believes it's going to go any way but him being convicted. Like, all of Barty Crouch's trials, like, there are no lawyers, no witness testimony, like, you know. Then we see Harry's trial, which is, like, super over the top for, like, underage magic. And it's like, yes, none of those are the most typical situations, but, like, to me, it just speaks to, there are a lot of trials, and that speaks to the idea that there is no, like, one specific way a trial is run, and that it is very much up to the individual whims of whoever is running the trial.
That's in line with how, not just with trials, but with just about everything, how corrupt institutions tend to operate, because generally speaking, institutions that have some concern about fairness have relatively standardized procedures for things. And I know I'm speaking in generalities, but institutions that are corrupt typically don't have as much of a standard procedure, because potentially a standard procedure can be an obstacle to, going back to what we said earlier, getting a particular result that you want. And it can just make abuse of the system harder.
Yeah. And I think in general, like, what I'm noticing both, like, because we have been talking about some different potions recently, like I wasn't on the Polyjuice potion episode, but I've listened to most of it by this point. Yeah, so we have like Amortentia, we have Veritaserum, we have Polyjuice potions. All of these seem to have like no regulations, and it seems like in general in the wizarding world there is very little care for like protecting individuals and their rights. Like that seems like totally not what the government thinks it's there for. What we mainly see is like when we see these trials, like it's things that put society as a whole in danger that are prosecuted, not offenses against an individual. And like, I think that's really interesting that it's like, and it ties back to this idea of like, the point of the trial is to protect us as a society from potential dangers. And like, even like how harshly underage magic is, like, you know, you would think that using Veritaserum or Amortentia or Polyjuice potion would be worse than like, you know, casting one Patronus charm and a hover charm, but like that what Harry is doing is like bad because it's putting the entire society at threat. So he might have his like whole like ability to do magic taken away from him, but like putting a love potion in someone's drink, it's like, whatever. It's like, that's kind of your own fault for not watching your drink better. Yeah, there's just like not very much care for like individual harm versus collective harm.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And even the individual even the idea of individual harm versus collective harm is very much, it's pretty well established that it operates in a discriminatory way, because it comes up in Half-Blood Prince that even the issue of underage magic is treated differently in practice for Muggle-born students than Half-Blood or Pure-Blood students. And then you also think about, from like a collective safety standpoint, after the First Wizarding War, from a collective safety standpoint, the best thing to have done with Lucius Malfoy would have been to throw his ass in Azkaban. But in his case, it seemed like they really, really prioritized the individual because essentially he was giving the Ministry a lot of money.
Yeah, those are both amazing points. And I think like with the sort of Muggle, like how they are actually finding out about underage magic and like who they're prosecuting on that is very much like, it's not actually that we care that much about you doing magic outside of Hogwarts underage. Like, if you have wizarding parents and you're doing it in a wizarding home, in a wizarding town, or whatever it is, like, we don't care. Like, what we care about is that you're not revealing our secret. And so therefore, yeah, like certain people, like technically it's a rule for everyone, but really it's a rule for people who live in certain places and are surrounded by Muggles. Yeah. And some of it is so dumb where it's like, Harry does magic in front of a Muggle, and it's like, that's his cousin.
Yeah,
who
I think he
knows that he can do magic. It's like,
yep.
It's all kind of ridiculous. The one area that we see more like individuals being prosecuted for like things that they are doing to like, okay. People being prosecuted for something that they do that's unethical towards another individual is actually in the realm of, like, wizards doing things against Muggles. So we see that, like, there are a lot of rules about, like, and like, maybe this is actually, like, testament to Arthur being really good at his job and like actually caring about making rules, and maybe wizards in other areas just like don't care. But like there are a lot of rules about what sorts of like Muggle objects you can charm just in case they end up in a Muggle's hand, or like whether like what kinds of like things you could like charm in, like what you can do to a Muggle, and like what you can do to Muggle objects, either with the intention of a Muggle having them and responding poorly to them, or whatever it is. Like there are a lot of rules in that area, and not in the area of what you can do to another wizard. Like, seems like wizards doing like sketchy magical things to other wizards, it's like, yeah, well, you're all wizards, so like, you know, you just have to fend for yourselves. But with muggles, I think it is like probably twofold. I think a big part of it is like, well, we don't want muggles to find out about us. Like, I think that's the biggest thing, is like, we don't want muggles to find out about us. And then I think there's also like the people like Arthur Weasley are coming at it from a point of like, they can't defend themselves with like, they can't defend themselves. They are more vulnerable. And so it is our job to like keep them safe. And so I just find that fascinating that there's just this sort of assumption that wizards are kind of allowed to do kind of whatever to other wizards, and nobody really cares unless it's like affecting overall society and safety. But like that, at least within the last however many years, there are rules of what you can do to muggles.
Yeah, I think it's, and you see this, a lot of times when reforms have gotten passed in real history, you know, in countries like, you know, the US and UK and, you know, the real Muggle world, a lot of times one of the reasons these reforms get passed is that people who generally have different mindsets are able to find common ground based on different motives. And it occurs to me that with the Muggle protections, to your point about how a lot of it is, for people not like Arthur Weasley, is about sort of maintaining the statute of secrecy, that might be the way that in the wizarding world that somebody like Arthur Weasley and somebody like Fudge, who probably generally had very different views about Muggle rights and protection, that might have been how they both ended up supporting regulations like that, you know, for different reasons. Because I think that might be a case where the goal of Muggle protection and the goal of maintaining the secrecy of the wizarding world, instead of being at odds, are actually in conjunction with each other, where they would motivate the same policies.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Thank you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think we're kind of at the end of the doc now, but does anyone have any final thoughts about Veritaserum?
I want to sit down with Percy and without Percy and just think about how law in general, because it seems like there's not really a big set of laws here, but also international law could work. And I think the wizarding world really has to think through their ethics and morality and what war crimes they're committing on day-to-day life.
I touched on this a little bit. I agree with you there. Yeah, I mean, I think Percy and Hermione are kind of foils about two different types of rule followers, and one who actually, you know, really cares about justice and will bend the rules toward that goal, and another person who really is just a stickler for rules without regard for sort of individual situations and people's rights and things like that. But it's interesting. We touched on this a little bit, but I mentioned this in the doc, and I just want to, you know, mention this a little bit more explicitly, is that one of the issues with Veritaserum is it seems like any number of things that could affect somebody's memory, from the Imperious curse to being confunded to even, to use a Muggle example, having a concussion. You know, it seems like all of that stuff could potentially lead to false positives with Veritaserum, where an innocent person potentially was convicted of a crime based on testimony they made under Veritaserum, involving sort of a warped perception of reality.
Yeah. So
it does seem like, to everybody's point, it's an ethical minefield.
Yeah,
totally.
Absolutely.
Totally.
It's a good way to end the episode, an ethical minefield.
That is.
I always end it on really morbid stuff without meaning to. Like, I very distinctly remember I ended the Law and Order episode offhandedly mentioning that in the United States, they only require 5 to 6 months of training for police. And that just happened to be how we ended the episode.
Well, we bring you on for some dark topics, perhaps. Maybe it's not from you, it's just the topic itself.
I enjoy discussing it, though. I had a great time both times.
Has been a great discussion. Hey, Karolina, what's playing on the pub's Jukebox today?
Today, we're playing, and I have to say, I'm really not very well versed in the Wizard Rock scene, but I thought the title was very fitting. F the Ministry by Justin Finch Fletchley and the Sugar Kills.
Love it.
Excellent sentiment.
Your manipulation may work on some folk, but it don't work for me. The daily prophet is the daily puppet, catering to the whims of the ministry. So F the ministry, F the ministry, F the ministry, yeah.
And with that, Charles, I want to thank you so much for visiting the Three Broomsticks. It was a pleasure talking with you. Are there any things you want to plug, or can we find you online? Can our listeners find you online?
Yes. So if you go to Charles Boyd on Substack, you can find me there. That is, it's just called Charles's Substack at Charles Boyd, also Charles O'Halloran Boyd. And then if you want to find me on Twitter, then you can go to at capital M minority of 175, where I do everything from history to fandom to politics to pictures of my dog. So those are really places that I kind of wanted to plug for this episode.
That sounds lovely. And of course, we'll put them on our website as well. If you enjoyed your time at the pub today, please rate and review us online or tell your friends about our show. Also, huge thanks again to Kate Rieken, who bought us this round of drinks at the Three Broomsticks. If you'd like to buy us the next round, head over to patreon.com, 3 broomsticks with the number 3 to sign up.
And if you want to find us online, we're on various social media channels, which are linked on our website and in the show notes. I have been doing some emoji, guessing the next chapter title we're doing based on the emojis, which has been quite fun, and will give you also a heads up on recommended reading for next episode. And we share our upcoming Patreon schedule, some reactions, fun little things. Easter was recently, and Irvin and I went to the New York Easter Bonnet Parade, and there's a video of me with my Harry Potter inspired Easter hat. So if that sounds interesting, you should check out our Instagram. So our website is 3broomstickspod.com with the 3 spelled out, and you can submit a topic there, or you could let us know your thoughts and comments. And next time we meet at the Three Broomsticks, we will be discussing Goblet of Fire chapter 34, which is, funnily enough, called Veritaserum. I have been Sophia.
Karoline, and thank you for listening. See you next time in the Three Broomsticks.
Cheers!
Give me big old buckets of butterbeer. Give me big old barrels of butterbeer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here of the sweet old butterbeer.
This episode of The Three Broomsticks was edited by Patrick Musilek. The theme song was written and performed by The Faithful Sidekicks. Make sure to check them out at thefaithfulsidekicks.com.
Oh,
And I actually, I believe Grace's book comes out on my birthday, so I'm going to be getting that for my birthday.
Ooh, should I keep mine going?
Yeah, let's just keep it going.
So it's totally fine. All right, let's hope this...
Better now than like half an hour in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
Oh, my God. That ain't a mood, though.